Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Cardano and its native token, ADA, and we're just going to provide a market outlook. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. So, we've been following ADA over the course of this downtrend for quite a while now. And I just want to provide some general market thoughts on where ADA currently is, sort of talk about macro in some sense and where eventually it might go, but also talk about some of the headwinds that we're going to face over the next few months. So, of course, we do have the hard fork coming up, and I imagine we could easily see ADA rally into something like that. But one of the things that I want to do is I don't want us to lose sight of kind of what's going on right now and what's happened in the past so that we can learn from our mistakes. Okay? So, as of today, ADA is coming in at around 65 cents. Now, the last time we spoke about ADA, I did a video. I said Cardano searching for a cycle bottom. And in this video, we talked about getting a rally back up to the bull market support band. Okay? So, seeing a rally back up to it. We saw several rallies up to the bull market support band during the 2018 bear market, and then eventually we reached some type of accumulation phase, right? Where you sort of put in like some type of a double bottom, and it's a more convincing bottom than just say like a single point where you rally off of and never look back. But over here, you can see we discussed the idea of, okay, we're likely going to come back up to the bull market support band. And one of the reasons we said that is because of the idea, anyways, that remains to be proven yet. I don't even know if it's going to come true. But if you follow my other videos, we talked about the idea of a June rally for Bitcoin. Of course, if we just keep chilling at these levels for a few more weeks, then we'll have to talk about the idea of a July rally. But it's currently June 8th, and Bitcoin's still chilling around $30,000 or so. Now, if Bitcoin gets that rally up to its own bull market support band, which is a distinct possibility, and is something that we've talked about for a while with regards to, say, the 200-day moving average and rallying back up to it after getting that initial rejection. So you have the 200-day moving average and that trend that we've looked at in the past for Bitcoin. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about this trend line and this trend line over here, and essentially putting in higher lows, a rejection off the 200-day, failure to put in a higher low, a lower low, and then a rally back up to the 200-day moving average, right? And then additionally for Bitcoin again, right, low, a higher low, a rejection off the 200-day, failure to put in a higher low, a lower low, and then if you get that rally back up to the 200-day moving average, you would anticipate that to also be reflected in the prices of some USD pairs, including ADA. And with the rally into the hard fork, actually ADA's done this a number of times in the past. We've talked about it. We talked about it, in 2021 as well. A lot of these major milestones, you'll see rallies into them, and then it kind of dies off a little bit following the rally, especially if macro remains relatively risk off, which it seems like there's a good chance that could happen. Okay. So, ADA USD right now is at 65 cents. We talked about it, getting a rally back up to the bull market support band. And to just show you where that currently is, it currently ranges from 85 cents to 89 cents. But, it is moving down relatively quickly. So, if we were just to say, like, extend this out, the bull market support band, then let's say by the end of June, it could correspond to an ADA 75 to 80 cents or something. Okay. So a slight improvement on the current price, maybe to the tune of 20% or something. This, of course, is assuming that Bitcoin sees some type of relief rally above just the $30,000 to $32,000 level in order to support ADA USD continuing to climb. But I don't want people to sort of lose sight of the fact that, or at least what I would consider to be overwhelming evidence that Bitcoin, at least at this point, still very much remains in a bear market. And this is not, it's not about what I want or what I think has to happen. It's just looking at what the charts are saying. And again, it shows that the Bitcoin very much remains in this bear market. And until we really see some type of a surge back above the bull market support band, then you should just keep assuming that it will provide some level of resistance. And if we do rally above it, it will probably just fall right back through it until the markets are shifting gears to be a little bit more risk on. Okay, so in the short term, if Bitcoin sees that relief rally, beyond 32K, we could of course see ADA USD rally. But I want to draw your attention to a few other things. Okay, now the ADA USD valuation is important, but it's also important to go look at the ADA Bitcoin valuation. And one thing we can learn from the prior bear market is the ADA Bitcoin bottom was not actually corresponding to the Bitcoin US excuse me, did not actually correspond to the Bitcoin USD bottom. So ADA Bitcoin had a local bottom in December of 2018, right? And then the ADA Bitcoin valuation bounced heading into April. Over the next several months, it bounced by 130%. But the ADA Bitcoin valuation did not actually bottom until about half a year after Bitcoin USD bottomed, and that was because Bitcoin went on, one of these Bitcoin only rallies for a while. Okay, now I do think it's certainly possible that we could see a Bitcoin only rally. Would we see a Bitcoin only rally that goes up 3 or 4x like 2019 right now? Probably not. Could we see a Bitcoin only rally that goes up to 35 to 40K? We could. When I say Bitcoin only, I don't mean no alts would go with it. I think they would. But what I mean by that is I think the dominance would go up for Bitcoin. I think the dominance will continue to climb. So yes, there could be some altcoins, maybe even including ADA, that could temporarily outperform it against Bitcoin. But the Bitcoin dominance is still likely going to go up as it outperforms most everything else. Okay, so I would generally expect the dominance to go much higher. I know ADA Bitcoin right now is in a local bounce off of its most recent local low. Guys, I got to tell you, I've been in these markets a long time. And also, you should understand, too, that just because I've been in the markets a while doesn't necessarily mean I'm right. I could easily be wrong. I want to be clear about that. I'm just trying to say from past experience, I've sort of gotten my hopes up before on these sort of local lows, and then it just seems like you just eventually go lower, right? Especially on the Bitcoin pair. So I would look towards the bull market support band for the ADA Bitcoin pair because you can see it's held some level of resistance. Okay. Now the ADA Bitcoin pair is currently sitting at around just over 2,100 satoshis. The bull market support band ranges from 2230 or 2291 to 2231 satoshis. So not too much higher from where we currently are. Now, there was an example in 2019 when the ADA Bitcoin valuation got above its bull market support band, but that was actually after Bitcoin USD had bottomed, not before. And until that time, we had mostly just gotten rejected by it, even if we did have a brief period of time where we might wick above it for a day or something. Okay, so with all that in mind, we have to look at this ADA Bitcoin valuation and say, yes, we are in a local uptrend off the most recent local low, but we've seen this before. In December of 2021, we saw ADA's valuation against Bitcoin rally 53%. In February of 2022, we saw it rally at almost 40%. And then right now, we're seeing it rally around 43%. And I know, like having an expectation that the ADA Bitcoin valuation will likely continue to bleed for more months to come, even if locally it bounces, isn't necessarily what people want to hear, but it is what we're seeing play out. We've seen it play out before, and it's likely going to play out again. Could be wrong, right? If the market just overwhelmingly changes, but I do think the evidence supports it. Now, I will say, a lot of people are talking about all these layer ones and everything. Look, as I've said before, not every cryptocurrency will see a new all-time high. Okay, so I think Bitcoin will. I think Ethereum will. I also do think Cardano will eventually see a new all-time high. Okay, I can't say the same thing about all the other layer ones, even including layer ones that are in the top 20. What I think about a lot of layer ones is that they chase bull markets, and they do what they can do as quickly as possible. I'm not talking about all the layer ones. I'm just talking about, there certainly are a few that just sort of get their product out to market as quickly as possible during a Bitcoin bull market. But then once the bear market comes, the fundamentals just aren't really there. And I do think Cardano will continue to grow in terms of its overall excuse me, sorry, in terms of its overall valuation for years to come. But we also recognize that that Bitcoin USD is currently in a bear market. And even if Bitcoin USD sees that June rally that we've talked about, we understand that ADA could go up 70, 80 cents potentially, right? That could happen. But it doesn't necessarily change the ADA Bitcoin valuation still very much being in a bear market. So it's just something to consider and something I've learned the hard way, on more than one occasion. So just keep that in mind, and we'll see if ADA's valuation against Bitcoin can in fact improve. If you are holding ADA, I would remind you can go stake it with the ITC stake pools. We have ITC, ITC2, and ITC3. So you can go stake your ADA with those stake pools if you would like to earn rewards. But furthermore, there is the ADA Bitcoin valuation, okay? And one thing to consider, and this might actually be some analysis on Bitcoin USD, is that ADA Bitcoin had a local bottom at around 849 Satoshis. If ADA Bitcoin were to drop another 60%, maybe that'll be some evidence that Bitcoin USD is bottomed. I don't know. But I mean, I'm just saying to just draw out what I'm talking about, imagine ADA's valuation against Bitcoin sees a little bit higher of a surge. Let's suppose it even rallies slightly above the bull market support band, then comes back down. If it puts in a lower low and then rallies again. And if it does something like this, then maybe that would correspond to a Bitcoin USD bottom, right? And then maybe you'll actually see a more sustained rally by ADA Bitcoin. Not necessarily one that has to mark the bottom, but maybe it'll do something like this and then put in some type of like double bottom and then go off on a new rally. I do think the ADA Bitcoin valuation likely has further to fall than the ADA Ether valuation. So like the ADA Ether valuation, I think you could argue is closer to a bottom than the ADA Bitcoin valuation. And you might say it's already bottomed. I don't necessarily think that is the most likely case, but it is above its bull market support band, which is at least a point in its favor. One thing to recognize is that the ADA Ether valuation in 2018 sort of bottomed at around the same level that we already went to, and we actually already wicked below it. So if you look at 2018, you can see this is what it looks like, and this is where the ADA Ether valuation spent a lot of its time. So I wouldn't be surprised in the very least if the ADA Ether valuation sort of held its own for the next 6 months, right? It certainly could. I do think the ADA Ether valuation is closer to a bottom, at least this year, than the ADA Bitcoin valuation, if that makes sense. And the reason I think that is because I think that Ether has held up. I mean, Ether's held up relatively well against Bitcoin, but I mean, this looks like a nasty chart, guys. Like, let's be real, right? You guys learned all about Wyckoff distribution in 2021, including myself. And I mean, this just looks like another nasty Wyckoff distribution chart of the Ether Bitcoin valuation. So that's why I'm saying, Ether Bitcoin could easily drop a lot further, but ADA's valuation against Ether might not drop as much because I don't think that ADA Ether chart looks nearly as ugly as the Ether Bitcoin chart, but the ADA Bitcoin chart still kind of looks a little ugly, right? It still seems like it could, it can continue to fall. I'm not really sure if this would be best thought of as like an oscillator where, you come back down to the bottom of the range and then you also sort of have the top of the range. A lot of altcoins might like oscillate against Ether, oscillate against Bitcoin. So you could argue that the ADA Bitcoin valuation is an oscillator. So like if you just simply did nothing more than buy ADA when it was down here against Bitcoin and then sell it to Bitcoin up here and then buy ADA back with Bitcoin down here and then sold it back to Bitcoin up here. And then if we come back down this way, then the simple thing would just be to, all right, well then it means it's time to get back into ADA as a way of spreading your risk around if it in fact does bleed all the way back down. Okay. So with all that said, I mean, I understand that a lot of you guys watch these videos and you are like diehard ADA bulls and ADA maximalists, and you want me to tell you it's just gonna go soaring. But while I do think Bitcoin USD could experience that relief rally, and we put out a whole video on it on Bitcoin USD maybe getting one of these June rallies back up to the 200-day moving average. that likely would be somewhat reflected in ADA USD going higher. But I still think the dominance of Bitcoin would go up. And while ADA Bitcoin could locally pump, I'm not sure that that pump would be sustained any further than, say, the hard fork, at the end of the month. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. And if we do get rejected and we come back down, remember, we don't actually have to go all the way back down here to find an 80 USD bottom. You could argue that December 2018 was the 80 USD bottom. Not the ADA Bitcoin bottom, but the 80 USD bottom. We did have a lower low in the during the pandemic drop, but if you ignore that and just say that this was sort of like a double bottom here, you could more or less argue that this was the bottom. This was just some type of over-leveraged event where everyone just got wiped out. But this is where ADA USD bottomed, which corresponded to the ADA Bitcoin valuation at around 800 or close to 900 Satoshis. ADA Bitcoin didn't bottom until it was at like 400 Satoshis, so a lot lower. Now, if ADA Bitcoin were to go back down to these levels, it wouldn't likely just because Bitcoin's in a bear market. It could be Bitcoin's in a bear market for a while, and then maybe Bitcoin goes into a bull market for a while, sending the ADA Bitcoin valuation down, and then perhaps ADA Bitcoin would rally back up after a Bitcoin bull market, or something like that. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you guys enjoy the content. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up. Remember to stake your ADA with the Into the Cryptoverse stake pools. You can find information on how to do that in the description below. And also check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We have all sorts of charts, including charts on ADA, all sorts of on-chain charts, social statistics, return on investment, all sorts of stuff. So go check it out, lock in the low rate. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.